I already made a video like this for the Owl House almost 2 years ago about my personal neurodivergent headcanons for the Owl House characters. It was inspired by School Trust character analysis, and it was almost 30 minutes long and has almost 30,000 views. Thank y'all so much for blowing up. So basically, this will be the same thing, but with fewer characters involved and it's just to sum up what I'm gonna go over in this video. Basically, I'm gonna explain why I see the following characters with the following disorders. Just a disclaimer, these are headcanons. I'm not trying to put labels on anyone other than myself. This video will explain why I headcanon Caitlyn with autism, Vi with autism, and Powder, aka Jinx, with DID. I have seen a lot about this headcanon on Tumblr and Reddit. Here's why I headcanon Caitlyn Kiramman as autistic. First of all, something that she doesn't do very often, but we do still see her do sometimes, is she sometimes stims. We see this when she fidgets with her gun, plays with her fingers, and taps her thumbs. There are small stims that autistic people aren't really known to do, but can still do. Some autistic people may stim a lot, others may only stim a little. Another important thing about Caitlyn is that she tends to hyperfixate on things. Like when she tries to figure out what's going on in Zon, she gets obsessed with it and focuses on it for days and ignores everything else going on around because she was assigned this task and she wants to complete it. And Caitlyn tends to get excited when she figures something out and starts rambling about it. Like when Jace asked her about it, and she got so excited over his curiosity about her interests. Which honestly, me when someone mentions Arcane or the Owl House to me. Another thing is that Caitlyn sometimes needs a little extra time to process social situations. We see this in the scene of Season 1, Act 2, when Vi tries to flirt with her for the first time, and bring Finn into the conversation. Still don't get how this was even necessary, but I feel like both Vi and Kate were showing a little bit of autism in this. While Vi was showing a few different autistic traits, which I will go over in the next chapter of this video, Caitlyn clearly did not process this conversation very well. I can't tell if Vi thought Pim was asking for her name or Kate's name, or if Vi was calling herself or Kate Matilda. I feel like this scene was a bit confusing for everyone who was involved and saw it, and the reason I say they were both showing a bit of autism in the scene is because Vi shows to struggle with clear communication, while Caitlyn struggles to process the conversation properly and quick enough. So you can't really blame either of them, they're just a gay autistic couple. Next thing, Caitlyn sometimes comes off as blunt or rude without meaning to. We see this when her and Vi are talking, and Kate wants to understand Vi's situation of wanting to get back to Powder. Caitlyn assumes that Vi's family is alive and asks if she had parents that would update her once in a while, but she ended up sounding rude when Vi told her that her parents were killed by enforcers, and you can't tell after she said this, Kate feels, well, horrible. And I feel like this happens a lot of social situations as autistic people. We say things that make sense to us, but we end up bringing up sensitive topics that result in us feeling horrible and that we are being rude. At the time when writing this, earlier this week, I had the same thing happen to a friend from school, and I ended up getting threats, and I had to go to the school principal about, but it's sorted out now. Another thing about Caitlyn that I feel like I can see in Hunter too is that when she was younger, she seemed to only be able to make bonds with older people instead of people in her own age group, like Hunter from the Owl House. He was only able to talk to people from in the castle, which was mainly adults. And honestly, I can relate. During the summer of my childhood years, I would sometimes go help my dad with work with older people. And I feel like I formed better bonds with the people my dad works with than the people I work with at school. And I see this a lot in Caitlyn when she was a child. And the final autistic trait that I'm able to find for Caitlyn is that she tends to have social anxiety. When she feels this anxiety, she tends to miss social cues. Like when her and Vi talk to Cassandra, Kate has trouble being able to tell whether or not she's allowed to leave the room, and when she's allowed to do so. And it just seems like whenever she's having a serious conversation with someone or talking to someone new, she always tries to have Vi with her to calm her anxiety about talking to people. I say this because whenever she's with Vi and has to talk to someone new or a crowd, Vi holds her hand because she knows that Caitlyn can get anxious. Because I'm pretty sure Vi can relate to a struggle. I bet Vi has some sort of social anxiety too, but it's just better at masking it. And I feel like Kate masks it a lot too. Like when she talks to people she's not comfortable talking to, like Jace, for example, then she masks by acting like the person she's expected to be as an enforcer. That's enough for this chapter. Let's move on about. No one has spoken about this much at all on social media. I literally cannot find anything anywhere. But at first I didn't see it at all, but lately, like over the past almost month, I rewatched Arcane and I see quite a few autistic traits in Vi. Although I see a lot of people online with this headcanon for Caitlyn instead, I honestly see it in both of them. So let's start with the most obvious autistic trait Vi displays, which is having a short fuse and having meltdowns. So she does this when she's frustrated, angry, scared, or just upset. Sometimes when she is already isolated or being isolated, she shuts down and kind of curls into a ball. And I know that a lot of other characters are seen doing this body mannerism in the show, but neurotypicals can tend to do that too, so it doesn't make them autistic. And when she seems scared or anxious, she sometimes goes nonverbal. An example of this is when her and Caitlyn first kiss. And during Vi's meltdown, she tends to say things that she regrets. Like at the end of season 1, episode 3, when she calls Powder a Jinx, causing psychological issues that I will cover in the next chapter of this video. And she was in so much distress and not in control of herself that she ends up saying and doing things that she would never do. This is a very common thing with autistic meltdowns, and I can relate to this a lot. I have actually damaged objects due to my meltdown, so to see something like this represented in Vi is amazing. Another thing about Vi is that it doesn't become very clear until season 2 is that she is very easily tricked and predictable. She even admits to it in the sex scene in episode 8. Before they make out, she says that she messed up and falls for everyone's lies all the time, that she lost everyone she loved due to it. And Caitlyn doesn't even try to lie to her and says that Vi is very predictable. And let's be honest, she really is. And something that I don't know if a lot of autistic people experience when socializing, but personally, I sometimes can't recognize tone. And sometimes people assume that I'm stupid because of that. So people have told me lies in an obviously lying tone and expected me to believe it. Because a lot of autistic people have trouble recognizing tone and being tricked easily. Neurotypical people think they're stupid. Now, onto the scene when Vi tries to flirt with Caitlyn for the first time. This scene shows impulsivity, getting straight to the point, coming off as blunt, and struggle to recognize emotions. Let me explain. So without thinking, not only does Vi start casually flirting with Caitlyn and pins her to the wall, but when this pin person fucks Vi and she stops them and tries to introduce Caitlyn to them, like, huh? Still don't know why she did this. And she shows being blunt when she just straight up says what's on her mind, despite not knowing how Kate feels about her. And we see that when Vi pins her to the wall, she looks very confused. And Vi doesn't seem like she even notices. She especially can't tell when Caitlyn seems uncomfortable and anxious. When she tries to get her to talk to Pim, in the way Vi gets straight to the point to saying what she thinks of Kate in the most random way possible. And I know she's just trying to flirt with Kate with a pet name, but the fact that she repeats the word cupcake multiple times throughout the show.
You're hot, Cupcake. You gonna help me out, Cupcake? Do yourself a favor, Cupcake. It's been real, Cupcake. You're so sweet. Like a cupcake. Don't sugarcoat it, Cupcake. I am the dirt under your nails, Cupcake.
And she doesn't call Kate any other pet name, just Cupcake. She got some word repetition. And some other examples of when she doesn't recognize emotions is after Kate's mom's funeral, when Vi goes over to talk to her and said,
Thought for sure you were gonna get yourself killed.
And she said later in the episode that she thought Kate had a good sense of humor, but she didn't even notice Kate was upset, or she wanted to, I guess, cheer her up, but it didn't work. Also, Vi tends to say things to people when they're upset or having a moment to try to help them de-escalate in her episodes. However, when she does this, it actually ends up making the person feel worse, and she doesn't notice it and keeps talking. We see this in the season 1 finale when Jinx is having a schizophrenic episode. Vi tells her to think of her family, and then Jinx just thinks about how she killed them, and it makes her feel worse. And Vi is not aware of this, so she keeps telling her to think of all these different people that just make her feel worse. Switching shows for a second, but this scene reminds me of the Owl House in the episode Any Sport in a Storm, when Hunter got Willow and Gus in jail, and Hunter was trying to speak positive about being in the Emperor's Coven, though he's not helping the situation at all. They are both mad at him for what he sees as a good thing, but really isn't. And both Vi and Hunter are very autistic coded. And I've been on about the autistic Hunter headcanon for well over a couple of years. So if you're still confused and you're interested, look back at my old videos. And this is the first time talking about Vi being autistic. This is a very small trait she shows, but Vi tends to not be aware of her own strength. Also known as, I can't pronounce it, but I'm pretty sure I put it on the screen for you to see. We see this when her and Jinx fight, and Isha. Turns out I've been mispronouncing her name too, I'm a fucking dumbass. Isha intervenes in the sibling fight and bites Vi's arm when she then throws her off for over a little bite. Maybe not because of her, but maybe sensory issues. And Jinx and Vi pause. You see just the look on Vi's face when she knows she fucked up. And I feel like Vi always wearing a bandage on her arms and hands may not only be for her injuries, because I'm pretty sure I've seen her arms beat up way worse and she didn't wear the bandage. I feel like with the last few acts, Vi may be wearing the bandage as not just for her injuries, but for potential sensory issues. And I guess touching things out of anger, like a middle school boy going through puberty, is kind of like a stim Vi does when she's angry or panicky or upset, which I tend to do. Well, I tend to squeeze things, and when Vi is mad, she also sometimes tends to squeeze her fists, like she's ready to jump someone's ass. And I don't know if you can count this as a special interest, but Vi seems like she's always ready to fight, where she takes anything as a hint that it's time to fight, even when it's not. So Vi may have a special interest in fighting. Also notice how when Vi forms bonds with people, she either does not care for the person at all the entire series, or she decided that she likes them and wants to be their friend right away. Her relationship with Caitlyn is a good example of this. The fact that Caitlyn also displays a lot of autistic traits, and the fact that Kate has a very close bond with Vi, since Kate is neurodivergent coded. Bonding this close with Vi may indicate that Vi may also be neurodivergent, specifically autistic. I have heard some people talk about this headcanon, and I feel like Jinx shows very good representation of this disorder. And yes, I'm calling her Jinx now. You'll find out why. This is why I headcanon Jinx with DID, Dissociative Identity Disorder. Now, a year ago, I have never even heard of this disorder or what it's like. I found out the hard way when my ex-girlfriend, if you know, you know, started texting me on Discord in a way that I have never heard her speak. She was acting very different, and at first, I thought it was her mom texting me, and then she started going on about this random backstory that you would only hear in a really old cartoon. And at this point, I was very worried for her, but she told me Clover wasn't fronting, and then she fronted and explained everything to me. So yeah, found out the hard way what DID really is. And my current boyfriend has symptoms of DID. He dissociates in overwhelming situations or on command if he wants to. And he has an entire family of autism. But he's not diagnosed with DID or OSD, so we don't know for sure. But in the past year, I've had a few experiences with someone with DID. Last time I hung out with my boyfriend, he switched like twice. And let me tell you, it was weird. But I'd say I was pretty good with talking to him, since I knew exactly what was going on. Anyways, the reason I headcanon Jinx with DID is mainly because she has two different identities, Powder and Jinx. Both have completely different energies and different ways of thinking and communicating, with Powder being the primary identity. And as she went through trauma, abuse, abandonment, and manipulation over time, Jinx became her new identity. But up until the season 1 finale, she would sometimes switch back to Powder. And I'm glad I'm not the only one in the fandom that notices her personality switches, especially in season 1, act 3. We know when Powder is fronting when she actually talks to Vi like an actual sister and sees her as a sister. She shows empathy for Vi and tries to understand what's going on. But when Jinx fronts, she starts spiraling and thinks that everyone is lying to her, and she starts showing BPD symptoms. Which lately, I feel like I may be BPD as well, and I see this part of Jinx very relatable. And Jinx very obviously has schizophrenia. I am aware of this. And I feel like her personality switches with their schizophrenia episodes are the reason that she makes reckless decisions and mistakes. And these mistakes she makes during these episodes only encourage her identity as Jinx. Jinx refuses to see herself as Powder because Powder was seen as someone who can make bonds and fight for good. But when she messes up by accidentally killing her friends and her adoptive father, she feels like she has no chance at redemption, and she's a monster that fucks up all the time and hurts people when trying to help them. And with Vi, Jinx sees herself as a burden to her, so she thinks that she doesn't need Vi and refuses to see her as a sister. So basically, Powder is a person who wants to fight for the greater good and thinks positive about her friends and family and wants to help. Jinx is a person who thinks that all she can ever do is fuck up. She is unable to help anyone without ending up hurting them. She feels hopeless. She is very psychotic-coded and suicidal. Now, the real question is, who created Jinx? Was it Milo, Silco, or Vi? Personally, I think it was Vi. Vi is my favorite character, but I just can't defend her enough. Let me explain. Milo may have been the one to say that Powder jinxes every job. Silco may have been the one influencing Powder to become Jinx, but Vi was the one that called her a Jinx. Milo made the brick, Vi placed the brick, and Silco expanded upon it. Milo was the one that brought up the idea that Powder may be a Jinx. Not even that. Milo didn't even call Powder a Jinx. Vi was the first to call her a Jinx, the only character to say it at all. And she's even aware that she created the monster, which is Jinx, in season 2. Vi knows she's responsible for Powder turning into Jinx. She knows she was wrong for calling her a Jinx, and she knows she can never take it back because the damage has already been done. And I'm aware that Jinx is also very schizophrenic, BPD, psychotic, and anxiety-related, which I honestly understand the anxiety and psychosis part, because I have always had some sort of anxiety disorder all my life, and during the middle of the year up until pretty recently, it's gotten so bad to the point where I would be panicky all day, every day, and be barely able to do anything, just sit there in my panic. And that alone caused me to attempt suicide multiple times. And because of the fact that I managed to distract myself by detaching myself from my surroundings, I'm pretty sure I could have developed some sort of psychosis. This is a pretty sensitive topic for me, but I'm glad that Jinx is written to show all this very well. I know this character analysis is very unbalanced compared to my Owl House analysis, but that's because I had to make this video as much sense as possible while keeping a balance between the characters, if that made sense. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with this headcanon, and if you can relate to any of these characters, because I know I can, as I just rambled about in the last chapter. And I'm surprised I found this many neurodivergent traits in these characters, considering I didn't know shit about Arcane until a month ago, when I spent a week watching the entire series to get caught up for the last act. And I might make some more neurodivergent headcanon videos about Arcane characters, and maybe some LGBT headcanons as well, because during the days of writing this essay, I noticed something. But without further ado, I think I can wrap up this video here. Hope y'all enjoyed, stay safe, and Merry Christmas.